Assalamu alaikum. Such a great pleasure here to be with APPNA friends, President Mubashir Rana, Chair of the Bay Area Fall Meeting, Dr. Munir Javed, and so many friends out there. Dr. Mubashir Rana said that we have Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, who he said is a theological rock star, and Sheikh Hamza is a great friend. But I want to introduce, I'm so excited tonight, because I want to introduce to you a rock star doctor. Dr. Larry Brilliant, many of you have heard his name. You know that he is among Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. He won the TED Prize in 2006. He has been chairman of Google.org. He's been a professor of epidemiology. He helped to eradicate smallpox. He's chairman of Skoll Global Threat Fund. And he's done incredible amounts of things all around the world. But what I want to tell you, as a friend, dear friend of Dr. Brilliant, that the word niyat, which means intention, in our culture, Islamic culture, Pakistani culture, the core of everything that we do in our life comes from what the niyat is. And Dr. Brilliant, who I've known for almost a decade now, his core niyat is social service. Khidmat-e Khalq, SEVA. He's the founder of the SEVA Foundation, through which he has, and his organization has helped to bring to sight to 4 million blind people around the world. And the reason I say he's a rock star is because he's non-linear. He made a film on polio, on eradicating polio in India, called The Final Inch, which was Academy Award nominated. He's just finished making a film, Open Your Eyes, about a couple in Nepal who had cataract for 15 years, who could not see, but the story is about them getting their sight back due to the hospitals Dr. Brilliant has built in Nepal. So I don't want to carry on. He's a great Yaron Ka Yar. And I want to welcome, and please give a big round of applause to Dr. Larry Brilliant.
Assalamu alaikum. Meradosto. I want to thank Dr. Rana. I want to thank Dr. Munir Javed. I want to meet Sheikh Hamza and have a guftagoo. Dr. Javed said that he had left his heart in San Francisco, to which I say, Dil Dil Pakistan. You thought I didn't know. I want to thank Samina and Sal, my dearest friends. We've been together all over the world. We've met in India. We've met in Oxford, we've traveled everywhere, we've made movies together, we worked together on the concert for Pakistan at the United Nations, one of the most wonderful of all events. His book, Rock and Roll Jihad, if you haven't read it, it's the heart of the dilemma that we face today in the world, bringing together all of our magnificent traditions. Aapko bahut shukriya for inviting me. First time I went to Pakistan was in 1971. And I arrived not as a diplomat, but as a very long-haired hippie, in a very colorful bus coming from Iran, Afghanistan. The first person that I met in Pakistan, of course, was the customs official. I've forgotten her name, but she was a legend. She introduced herself by saying, as she got onto our psychedelically painted bus with 40 hippies, 40 young hippies, unmarried, except for me and my wife, who've been married 46 years, and we're both on that bus together. When we got there, she got on the bus and she looked at us deeply in her eyes, conveying the depths of this ancient civilization, and she said these words: "Don't hide it, I can find and smell your hashish wherever it may be." Allahu Akbar, here, we didn't have any. So Allahu Akbar, hey. So the first time I heard that, my wife and I were staying in Kashmir, in a village called Pahalgam, which is the first village on the pilgrimage to Amarnath. And we were staying there waiting to see if I would get a job at WHO. And we'd been waiting for quite a while because there was no chance in the world, I thought, that I would ever get a job for the World Health Organization, because I had hair down to the middle of my back. I had a beard down, well, I had a long beard. And the first time that I showed up at WHO, I was wearing a dress. You know, I'd come right from the ashram, and I was wearing a robe, and it looked to all the world like a dress. And I walked into the WHO building in Indraprastha State in New Delhi, and they said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I'm here because my guru, who lives in an ashram in the Himalayas, sent me because he said that smallpox would be eradicated because this was God's will." And they said, "Thank you very much." And they showed me the door. And that happened about a dozen times. And every time I left and went back to the ashram that I was living in, my guru would say to me, "Did you get your job yet?" And I'd say, "Oh, Baba, no, I'm not going to get my job." And he said, "You'll get it, and smallpox will be eradicated." And he would send me back, and after a while, I cut my hair a little bit. I found a very ill-fitting suit with a really terrible tie, and I started wearing it. And one day, the woman who ran the smallpox program said that she had had a vision or a nightmare that she could hire me not as a doctor, but as a clerk. And would I be willing to accept the position that she would have to create, which would be the lowest position in the history of the United Nations, which I thought was only fitting since I was the youngest person that they ever hired. I was 28 years old. And my first job that they gave me, this clerical job that they gave me, was to put together the papers for the work that had been done over the previous decade, trying to create a smallpox program. Now you have to understand that Pakistan beat India and eradicated smallpox first. But there was still some lingering doubt. What would you do if there was a case of smallpox in Pakistan and it was coming across the border to India? What would you do if there was a case of smallpox in India and it was going across the border to Pakistan? And heaven help us, what if there were two cases of smallpox in Kashmir? I mean, we have no rules. So India and Pakistan had negotiated a treaty which said what you do if a smallpox case went from one country to the other. And that treaty was all agreed except for one thing, which was whether it be Urdu on the top or Hindi on the top. Because the cover is very important. You can always judge a kitab by its cover. And this is an 8.5, 11-page paper, and the document was 8.5, 11. And the very first thing I did for the UN was decide if we make a book that was 17 by 11, we could have both languages on the top, because one goes left to right and the other goes right to left. And everybody agreed, and I was a hero, and they elevated me from a P2 to a P3. That's a super clerk. And I spent 10 years in India and Pakistan and Nepal and Bangladesh. Meena Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Hindustan, or Nepal, or Bangladesh, suffer 1970, kya hua hai? Did that come out right? And after we did eradicate smallpox in India, it took making 1 billion house calls. Our teams went to every single house in India 20 times, once a month for 20 months, to see if there were cases of smallpox. We had the picture of a young Pakistani boy who had got smallpox at the age of 12 months, We carried it all over. You should know that that photo and that card, which was used around the world to identify cases of smallpox, was the most published photograph in the history of the world. A young Pakistani boy. It was an amazing accomplishment, as it was in Pakistan, as it was in Afghanistan. And now we face something which is maybe even more important. Because it's one thing for the world to say, yes, we could rise up together, yes, we could bury our differences, yes, we could have people from 50 countries, we could stop fighting against each other, we could fight together on the same team. We could do it once to eradicate smallpox, but we'll never be able to do it again. That's what the world thinks now. But when we eradicate smallpox, when our suffer becomes a cipher, and we get to 0 cases of polio in Pakistan, when the 38 cases, which are all that are left in Pakistan, become 0. And I have to tell you, India has beat Pakistan, but there's still a chance to beat Afghanistan. I mean, we don't want to go down in history of Pakistan being the last case. We don't want that. I'm wearing a tie, by the way, which says End Polio Now, which was given to me by the Rotarians. And if there has ever been a group in the world which has done unbelievable work to eradicate a disease, it's the Rotarians, and particularly the Rotarians of Pakistan. I think that's really worth saying something. And they're working with Sal, they're hosting Sal, they're giving him a place. Of course, Sal is not the same as the rest of us. You know, when I wanted to eradicate smallpox, we went house to house, one after another after another. What he does is he goes in the streets of Lahore and he says, I'm going to sing tomorrow, and 500,000 people come to hear him. And then he says something like, Pakistan hai hamara, you know, and then they just don't do anything, they'll just follow him. So, I told you about Allahu Akbar Hai, and the first time I heard it, I was living in this little village in Kashmir, in Pahalgam. And my wife and I were walking from Pahalgam down to Srinagar, and we were passing this doctor's office. His name was Dr. Muhammad Beg. Do we have any Muhammad Begs in the room today? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. But that really was his name. And we passed by his office every day, going back and forth. But I heard a commotion in the office, and I went to the front door, and he came to the door, and I said, I'm an American doctor, I'm staying in Pahalgam. It's the coldest place in the entire universe. I've never been this cold. Could we come in, please? And he said, yes, and I'm going to show you something. Would you like to see when I take the bandage off of a patient that I performed cataract surgery on? Yesterday he was blind, and when I take the bandage off, he'll be able to see. And I thought that would be pretty terrific. Vision is so important. 15% of all the blindness in Pakistan was caused by smallpox. At one point, 10% of all the blindness in the world was caused by smallpox. I thought this would be a really terrific thing to see. So he took me in a room, and there was an old man. But thinking about it, he was a little younger than I am, but he looked old to me at the time, because I was like 26. And Dr. Beg took the bandages off his eye, and he held up 2 fingers. How many fingers? And the man couldn't say anything at all. Tears started coming down from his eyes. And Dr. Big held up 3 fingers. And he said, how many fingers? And the man just couldn't say anything. Then he held up 1 finger and says, please don't tell me that my operation went bad. How many fingers am I holding up? And the man looked at him and said, Allahu Akbar. He couldn't say 1 or 2 or 3. He could only think of God's greatness that had given him back his sight. So that was the first time I ever heard Allahu Akbar. I can't help but feel happy every time I hear it. And I want to hear it on the day that Pakistan ends polio. आज पाकिस्तान के लिए हमें 38 पोलियो केसेस को खत्म करना होगा। हर बच्चे को 2 खतरे बार-बार देना होगा। And then we have to keep it free for 3 years after that, just as we did for smallpox. And then I want to come back here and tell you that Pakistan won the race against Afghanistan. And I want to be able to say to you then, Pakistan Zindabad. Pakistan hai hamara. Pakistan hai apna.